Good afternoon. Welcome along to Steve Wraith's True Crime Podcast. I'm delighted to welcome a good friend of mine, Joey Barnett. How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm brilliant, mate. Good as gold. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to come onto your platform, Steve.
No, great to
Brilliant.
see you, mate. And anybody who doesn't know Joey, get yourself on Amazon. A South London Borstal Boy's Tale by Joey Barnett is his book. It's a great read, fantastic read. One of those books which takes you on a roller coaster ride of Joey's life. And honestly, he's got the T-shirt on there as well, so he's not missing an opportunity to market. But honestly, get yourself on Amazon, get it read. And if you've already read the book, give it a 5-star rating, because I'm sure that if you've read it like me, you will know that book is well worth a read. But brilliant book. Get on it, and I'll stick the link in the description below. But anyone who's watched my True Crime podcast will know this is just a chat about Joey's life. And if you've got any questions for Joey throughout this next hour, then fire them across in the chat, and I'm sure Joey will do his best to answer them. But Joey, good to see you, mate. How are you doing?
Yeah, good to see you, mate. Yeah, actually, I'm doing absolutely amazing, Steve. I'm feeling really great. Maybe for the first time in my life, I feel free. I'm drug free. I'm crime free. I'm working. Life is really good for me at the minute, Steve. Probably the best it's ever been. Over the last 11 or 12 years since I got myself clean from drugs and stopped committing crimes and just laid my cards on the table, and had a little chat with myself. Life is absolutely amazing. There's new doors opening for me every day. I've got new opportunities coming. So yeah, they say 50 and shifty, Steve. Do you know what I mean? I'm 53.
I'm creeping towards that myself. 49, I'm 50. Big 5-0 for me next year, when I always end up at Dave Courtney's house, usually for my birthday, because we share the same birthday month. We're only a couple of days apart. And usually, my big 50th will be next year. But yeah, you're right. Look, it's great. It sounds positive. Could you ever imagined, when you were at your darkest moment, sitting in a prison cell, that you'd be able to get to your 50th birthday, I suppose, and know that, suddenly you'd found this newfound life and that things would be on the up?
Never in my wildest dreams could I ever imagine I'd be sitting on the end of this computer talking to a legend like you, Stephen, and and seeing life for how it really is, and being on the right side of life and path. This time, going back in 1999 when I got 12 years, I couldn't see the next day, let alone like life now. When I got that 12-year sentence, I looked in the mirror after about 4.5 years, and I asked myself, can you carry on? Are you going to get out of this sentence? When's it going to come to an end? So I went through hell. So I never ever imagined in my wildest dreams that I'd be inspiring so many people, writing books, doing motivational talks, going into youth centres, youth custodies, and inspiring so many people. Reading the comments, what I'm getting every day, it actually puts a tear in my eyes to know the effect what I can really give on people. So yeah, it's absolutely amazing stuff, Steve, man.
For those people watching who don't know, what did you get the 12-year sentence for?
It was for a string of armed robberies, which occurred in 1999. So we was on a rampage from about 1997, 2 years, and it come to an end in 1999 when we got arrested on the last armed robbery, which was a main post office in Croydon in Surrey, and that's when my world come crashing down on me, really. When I got put on remand, and I got charged with another 6 armed robberies. So I got charged and convicted of times 7 armed robberies, and got sent to Inner London Crown Court for my trial. There wasn't much of a trial because there's so much forensics and evidence on us that there was no way I could go not guilty on it. So yeah, I was expecting a life sentence, Steve. I had to sack 2 different solicitors because they was offering me a life sentence with a very low tariff. But I knew there's no way because I knew I was that active and I was that game when I was younger. That if I did get a life sentence, I wouldn't be sitting here now talking to you. I would never have got out on it. So I sacked a few solicitors, and until I got the right solicitor, what said to me, look, you're going to get a big sentence. It's going to be a double figure. but it won't be a life sentence. And you know, on sentencing day, as he was just passing sentence to me, I jumped the dock and escaped out of the courtroom. That's another story what we need to talk about in the near future.
Yeah, what made you do that? I mean, obviously, you was it just the fear of potentially being double crossed and getting a life sentence and spending the rest of your time in prison? What was the reason for doing that?
To be honest with you, it wasn't a planned thing, so it was just on the spur of a moment thing. And yeah, I knew obviously I was going to get a big sentence. I was very frightened, very scared. I was never going to see daylight again, and I just thought, you know, I'm going to try and jump the dock and get my freedom for one last time before like the final door closes on me, type of thing, you know. So I just jumped over the dock and got out of the courtroom. I got hit up the road by a taxi driver. That's another story. But eventually, Steve, what happened was I got sent to the Old Bailey for escape, and that put another 18 months consecutive on top of my sentence. So it took me up to 13 and a half years. And I've done that very hard, Steve, the 13 and a half years. You know, it was very, very difficult.
What was it like going into prison that first night?
To be honest with you, the first time I was in prison was the age of 13 or 14 years of age. I was in Borstal, went to Borstal. I had a very traumatic childhood. I had a very, very loving family. You couldn't wish or you couldn't get a more loving family than what I've got. You know, everything was there. The love was there. But my mum and my dad had split up from an early age. So it was a family breakdown. My mum was very, very ill. She had cancer, thrombosis of the lungs and Crohn's disease. And I was aware of this from probably the age of 4 or 5. So I was constantly worried. And then the breakdown of my parents. And then moving on to a council estate with older boys, what was into like getting up to naughty things. My mum had so much love for me, Steve, and it don't sound too good, but this is the dead honest truth, mate. My mum had so much love for me. I was the only son, so I've got 2 older sisters. I've got Pamela, and she's 10 years older than me, and I've got Angela, she's just 2 years older than me. So there's 3 of us, and I was the only son, so I was the apple of my mum's eye. You know, like my mum was my world, and I was her world. And I was aware very young that she was very ill, you know, and this had a bit of a knock-on effect to me, you know. I got quickly went into a gang when I was growing up as a kid, because they showed me loads of love and the fast life, money and everything else, you know. So yeah, I mean, my school days was very I didn't like school. I didn't like authority. I didn't like being told what to do. My mum never used to tell me off because she loved me so much. She couldn't tell me off. So basically, when I was getting naughty, if I had a fight at school or if I'd done something naughty, I'd go home and maybe the teachers would ring my parents up or ring them up to go up to the school to have a meeting. Like, and my mum never used to hit me, never used to tell me off. She used to say to me, "Don't get caught next time." Do you know what I mean? Things like that. So I didn't really have a role model, Steve, as someone to look up to and someone to tell me right from wrong. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I could literally get away with anything what I wanted to get away with, and that was my childhood, really. Although we had a loving family, I had all the support around me still. I was affected by the breakdown of my parents, the violence what I see when I was a kid. When my dad left my mum, I was brought up by my stepdad. He come from Northern Ireland. His name was John. He brought me up from 18 months old. He was a worker. He was a painter and decorator. He was always at work. He supported us in every way he can, financially, give us everything we wanted. But he had a bit of a dark side to him, which we wasn't aware of at the time. He was an alcoholic. So he'd go work and then come home from work and go to the pub, and he'd come home and be violent indoors. So, you know, he'd be smashing the house up or smashing someone else up or, you know, throwing plates at my mum. So I see violence from a very young age. I've got a lot of childhood trauma, do you know what I mean? Steve.
Yeah.
And I wasn't really aware of any of this really until later on in life. Why I asked myself why I ended up the way I did end up, you know, and I can't blame my childhood, or I can't blame my family, but I didn't have the best upbringing, and I didn't really have many opportunities as a kid, you know.
Were you getting involved in petty crime then, Joey? Were you doing, you know, like, did you start off shoplifting, or did you start off, you know, nicking stuff from people's houses? How did you get started?
Yeah, so I was into motorbikes, and we started like stealing motorbikes, and then that went on to breaking into cars. Then we started stealing cars. That progressed to about the age 15. We was breaking into houses, and then we was breaking into factories. You know, we was up to all sorts, and I had many custodial sentences as a kid. And every time I come out of them custodial sentences, all my family was still there, all my friends were still there. Life hadn't changed, you know. It was just, you know, things didn't really change for me. I didn't really have many opportunities as a kid, but I did go to work, you know. As I got older, Steve, I did get jobs. I did own my own businesses, and I did settle down. I did get married. I did have kids, and things like that. So, you know, I had a good. I'll still say I had a normal childhood, because I was born in the '60s, and in the '60s, Steve, there wasn't much about them days. And I was born in southwest London, so it was a bit of a rough area. Rough, you know, you couldn't be a pussy or nothing like that. You had to man up, and yeah, there was like a big gang activity on my estate, and for some reason I took to the older boys.
Knocking around with an older crowd, yeah, that can lead to, you know, to getting involved in stuff maybe which, you know, is going to progress you up that ladder. I mean, you get in because of your size as well. I guess you were getting into you were getting pushed into places and easy to get through little holes in windows and stuff.
And because I was so game too, Steve, I wouldn't say no. Because I think I always thought if I say no, they'd be looking down at me. And where I'd not been bullied as a kid, but I was a scared kid, Steve. I was, as a youngster, I was very, very frightened. I was scared of, although I don't come across as scared now, I was actually absolutely frightened of my own shadow because of what I see at home with my mum and my stepdad. Well, not my mum, but from my stepdad. It put the fear of God into me. You know, he used to come home late, early hours in the morning, turn all the lights on, and, you know, start smashing the house up and chasing us all around the house. And, you know, so I was very frightened as a kid. And as I got older, this is probably where I went wrong, because then I couldn't say no to anyone that said do this and do that. I just didn't want to say no because I didn't want them to look down at me. I wanted to impress older people because I wanted to fit in with them. Do you know what I mean? I didn't get on with kids my own age. I just didn't have nothing with them. I couldn't gel with them because they was into normal things, and I wasn't into normal things as a kid. Do you know what I mean? I was a naughty kid. I was very mischief, and the kids, the normal kids on my estate, their parents used to say to them, "If you hang about with Joey Barnett, we're going to ground you for a few weeks." You know, so I was used as a bit of deterrent as a kid. So I was always aware of that. Do you know what I mean? And as I was growing up, I was building up a bit of a reputation. So I was aware of the reputation I was building up to, and I felt like I had to live up to that reputation. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was that reputation in the end what pulled me down and took me down and got me all them years later on in life. And
what was it like as a juvenile going into Borstal? I mean, were you terrified?
I mean, the first detention centre I went to was Send, and it was called the Short Sharp Shock. So it was run like a Borstal. It was run like an army camp, Steve. You had to do bed packs, you had to march, you had to say, "Excuse me, sir," you had to wear uniforms. Every time you passed an officer, if you didn't say, "Excuse me, sir," you got smacked round the mouth. We got completely and utterly brutalised and beaten by the officers as kids. And that's why they've done away with ball stalls later on in life, because the brutality and the violence, what we see as kids from these prison officers, which was like adults. So they couldn't get away with it now, Steve, because of the CCTV. But going back then, we got beaten up physically. And where I was a bit of a jack lad, I stood out a little bit from the rest. I was a bit of a daredevil. I was a bit too game for my own likings. The screws used to like bully me a little bit more than they did the other people. Do you know what I mean? Because I used to stand out a little bit too. I was standing out like a sore thumb. And when they used to smack me around the mouth, I used to laugh at them, Steve. Do you know what I mean? I couldn't fight them because I was like really small. Because I'm small now, you can imagine me as a kid. I was really skinny. I was like 7, 8 stone. You know, I was 5'6", 5'7". You're talking about 6 foot men in their 40s beating me up. Do you know what I mean? That's my dog. I've just jumped on the bed, by the way, Bruno. Bruno's the governor.
David Reed says, "What's the worst abuse that you suffered in Borstal?" I mean, you're saying, all these older screws bashing you and big 6 foot screw. I mean, was that the worst abuse, or was it from other inmates?
It was just every single place you went to in this. Even say, for instance, in the gym, you had these big, massive medicine balls. Now, bearing in mind, we were only 14, 15, and the PEI, the gym screw, would stand up and be throwing these medicine balls down into your stomach while you're laid out on the floor. And you'd be curled up in agony. I was only skinny. You'd be curled up in agony. And if he see you screaming, or he seen you going, or if he sees you can't really take no more, you'd get a dig for that. He'd pick you up, take you out into the other little room, and you'd get a smack around the mouth, or maybe a punch on the nose from that too. So if we went out onto the parade, say every Saturday and Sunday, we had to go on a big parade. We had to stand to attention with all of our uniform on, while the governor of the prison and the PO and all the higher hierarchy officers would come round in a parade and check each one of us. They'd check our shoes, our ties, our shirts. If we had one scratch on our shoes or anything like that, it'd literally backhand you straight round the mouth. It'd send you back into the dormitory. It'd make you take all your clothes off, do them all again, come back out again, and this would be repeated. But as I said, because I stood out a little bit like a sore thumb, they got to know me very quick, and I was bullied in there. I was completely bullied. I'll tell you what happened one day, Steve, was I was working in the greenhouse, which was the polytunnels during the daytime, planting some, I think it was cress or something like that. And it was in the afternoon, and I had a visit. So I was in a set of overalls, like a green set of overalls, and my work boots. And the greenhouse was probably about 500 yards away from the visiting hall. So it was like just on a field, across a field, in some like polytunnels. And I was working in the tunnels one day, and the officer which was standing there watching us got a message on his microphone, and he said, "Right, Barnett's for a visit. Barnett's got a visit. Send him back up to the wing." So he took me out onto the field and said, "Right, run up to the other side of the field as fast as you can to the other officer." I'll never forget it. It was pouring down the rain. I was only 15 years of age. I was skinny, but we was fit because we was made to run around the field every single morning at 6 o'clock, 5 laps, which was about 3 miles every morning at 6 o'clock, with brown boots on and our work clothes. So we was made to do these runs every single morning on this field. Anyway, this time I ran across this field for my visit, and as I got to the other side of the pitch, the green, the officer punched me straight on the nose and broke my nose. So there was blood. My nose just went bang. That's probably why my nose is broke now, Steve, to be honest. There was blood all across my face like this. He said, "Get back in the dormitory quick and get your visiting clothes on." So I went back into the dormitory, got my visit clothes on, and I went to the sink, and I was just about to wash my face, and he pulled me by the shirt. He said, "No." He said, "You get on the visit now." So I went on to the visit, and I had blood all down my neck, all over the place. And it was my poor little mum, she had cancer at the time, Steve. She was like 4'11". She was 6 stone, and it upsets me even talking about her now, you know, Steve. But she come up on the visit and she see me smothered in blood, and she asked me what had happened, and the officers had told me, you tell your mum that you'd fallen over on the way to the visit. And I had to lie to my mum and tell my mum that I'd fallen over on the way to the visit. And that's what happened, you know, they broke my nose. That was just one occasion. There's
Yeah.
many other occasions where I got beaten up and brutalised by the officers. So, Steve, because I've seen this from such an early age, I went to another detention centre not long after that. After I got out of Send, I went to another one called Hasler, which was in Portsmouth. And that was the same type of treatment as Send, exactly the same treatment. So by the time I actually got to young offenders at 17, 18, it didn't bother me, because the way I looked at it, Steve, is if I could go through that, then the young offenders, they don't brutalise you, and they don't beat you up. The screws in there. So it wasn't a deterrent for me no more. It wasn't. It was that I actually looked at it as a college for crime. By the time I got to 17, it didn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't scaring me no more.
You had a very close escape, and I remember listening to this on Sean Atwood's podcast with some dogs. You know, do you remember that particular incident where you were attacked by dogs? Tell us that story.
Yeah, well, I think I was around 11 or 12 or something like that. And there was an Indian family which I got on really great with. They lived on the corner of my road on my estate, Steve, and they had a greyhound and a whippet, 2 dogs. And I used to knock on the door and say, "Can I take the dogs for a walk?" So I used to, like, I was only a kid, but I used to love pets. I've always loved animals. My mum used to breed Alsatians, or had Alsatians, German Shepherds. So I've always been into pets, and I took a liking to these dogs. And I used to knock on the door and take these 2 dogs around the block. About 6 months went by and I didn't take him around the block. So anyway, well, I was walking along the road one day, and they lived on the corner of my road, and they had a big high wall which was about 4 to 5 foot high. And one afternoon, my friend, which was with me, he dared me to jump over the garden with these 2 dogs. So it was nothing to me, because obviously I didn't tell him that I took these 2 dogs out for a walk previously, and the 2 dogs knew me. So I jumped over the wall, and the minute I jumped over the wall, the greyhound jumped up at my face there and just latched onto my cheek and started pulling down at my cheek. The whippet grabbed hold of my face somewhere around my chin, that side. The whippet grabbed hold of me there, and they was both pulling me down. So I had a greyhound. Sorry, this camera's a bit weird, isn't it? Yeah, I had a greyhound that side, ripping my face, and that there. So they was basically ripping down at me. And I was screaming. There was pouring of blood. Half my face, half the side of my face was hanging off, Steve. And the Indian family heard it, but by the time they heard it, the damage was done. So it felt like a long time, but it was probably only around about 30 seconds to a minute. And they dragged the dogs off. Someone run along to my mum's house and told my mum what had happened. And my mum and my stepdad come to the house and got me. They took me home and rang the ambulance up, and they rushed me to hospital. But I always remember, like, my mum put some white towels around my face for the blood, and there was 3 white towels. They was wringing them out with blood. It was that bad. They kept me in hospital at night to have really bad, like, skin graft on my face. But I didn't see it come, Steve. You know, as a kid, I was a daredevil, and I was one of them. If someone said to me, "I bet you can't do this," then I would have a go at doing it, and I would probably, you know, whatever the consequences, because I just wanted to fit in and be like the others. That was it, Steve.
Yeah, no, I understand that, mate. I understand it. I mean, obviously, you've had you said it was a happy childhood, but it was a traumatic one. There's lots of key incidents there, which obviously led to your life of crime and getting involved in crime. Let's look at the armed robberies, and you know, just take us through. I mean, were you working with a regular team on those armed robberies? Was it something that you felt was a natural progression up the crime ladder, or was it a necessity for you?
To be honest, when I was when on my estate, I was always aware of, like, a few heavy blokes on there. I won't mention no names, Steve, but I was always aware of a few heavy blokes what was that always had nice cars, they always had nice gold chains, and they had the best of everything. And they was a few years older than me, and I was friends with them, so they was aware of me on the estate, and I always looked up to them. I didn't really join them until I got to the age of 26. So although I knew about them, I wasn't with them. I wasn't part of their team. I did do a few little bits and pieces with them, but nothing like heavy, no armed robberies or anything like that. I've done a few wage snatches and things like that with them, you know. But yeah, what happened was, Steve, was shortly after my mum passed away, my life took a dramatic turn for the worse. Just before my mum passed away, I split up with my missus, my ex-missus, and my 3 kids. So I did get married at one stage. I had 3 kids, and I was leading a normal life. I was working. I had my own business. Things didn't work out for us at that time because we was both very, very young, Steve, and that's the truth of it. We was kids ourselves, and we was having kids. Things just didn't work out. We stayed together for around 11 or 12 years. And when I got to 27 or 28, we both agreed to just split up on mutual grounds. So we split up and called it a day. I carried on to see my kids, but that's another story altogether, Steve. What we need to cover at another stage.
Yeah.
So basically, Steve, I split up with my missus and my kids. 3 weeks after I split up with my missus and my kids, my mum died. My mum died in my arms of cancer, and it broke me. Absolutely and utterly broke me. It was then that I'd said to myself, I don't care if I live or if I die, because if I die, I'm going to be with my mum. But if I live, I'm not living on this planet with no money. So I'm going to join this gang. So because I was aware of them, as I said, we was all brought up on the same estate. I joined their gang at the age of 28, and by then they was obviously armed robbers, and they was very high up in the criminal facility and criminal underworld, very well known. And there was bits of work and there was jobs getting offered to us like daily, you know. And yeah, guns was involved, armed robberies was involved. Because I moved in with the gang. I moved into the house with them. We had one house and we kept moving, so there was like 8 or 9 of us in one house, all living in one house. We never shit on our own doorstep, so we always done things away from where we lived. And I quickly rose up through the ranks very, very, very fast, because by the time I joined the gang, Steve, as I said, I split up from my family. My mum had died. Although I had my 2 sisters and I still had a very good family network around me, that wasn't enough for me. I was a broken man. So was I groomed? I'm not too sure. Was I vulnerable? Very, very vulnerable, yes. And was I a dangerous man? The most dangerous man you could ever look at that time.
What was your job as part of the gang?
At first, I went in as a driver because, as I told you earlier on, Steve, I was always good on the wheel. I was stealing motorbikes as a kid, stealing cars as a kid. So I was a shit hot driver. So at first, I went in as a getaway driver on the wheel. I quickly progressed from that within a few weeks. You know, it was me telling them, you know, I want to be in there. I want to be one at the front. You know, you can come in behind me. You know, because there's always 3 or 4 of us going out on these bits of armed robberies. And yeah, in the end, I went in as the front man, Stephen. I was the gunman very quickly. And we reigned for a good few years, for 2 or 3 years. There's a lot of drugs involved, a lot of party involved. You know what happens when you've got thousands of pounds every day, and you know you've got no initiative, or you've got nothing to you know. So yeah, it spiraled out. It spiraled very quickly out of control, the armed robberies, and I've done so many, Steve, that to me it was just like a walk in the park, if you want the truth.
It's like going
I
to
mean,
work.
it was a day. It was that's what it was known as a job. It was work to us, and
How many handed on these jobs were you? 4, 5?
yeah, we was four-handed all the time on them. Yeah, four-handed. Depending what job it was, you know. I got arrested for 7, so I can tell you about the 7. You know, a few of
Yeah,
them was
go on.
banks. There's a few banks, a few post offices, and 2 security vans. And
Did you have a card marker for each of the jobs, or were you scouting the jobs out yourself?
yeah, sometimes we was going out on the spur of a moment, and just going in, having a demand up over the jump there and then. And other times we was like, you know, planning and watching the van, watching it come the next week, waiting for him to come out of the box, you know, and bang, having him on the same time the next week. So yeah, some of them was planned, Steve, and some of them wasn't. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really have no victims. I couldn't really see victims at that time, Steve. It's only now, you know, I have nightmares about it. I've been diagnosed with PTSD, Steve, and I've got depression. I'm on medication for it, and I've been on it for many, many years. So I still suffer, although I've got hundreds of victims, you know, from different armed robberies. You know, I'm now a victim myself because I suffer with this every single day. Not for 1 minute do I ever think that it's committing these armed robberies is glamorous. Do you know what I mean? It's far from
Yeah.
glamorous. And I was at the pits of my hell. You know what I mean? It's the worst time of my life, Steve. And yeah, we reigned for a few years. And we would have probably reigned for a few more years, Steve, if it wasn't for an informer on our case. We got took down by an informer. So obviously the
Tell us a
police.
little bit about that. Then was that, how did that come about?
Basically, the police had our MO, so it was a mapping offence. They didn't have our description. They didn't have our name. They didn't have our date of birth. They didn't have a clue about us. They just knew our MO, and they knew that most of the post offices and most of the banks in southwest London was getting robbed by 4 different blokes. So they had our MO, and that's all they had. And me and myself and my boys was very aware that a few of the jobs we went to, that there was plainclothes police waiting outside for us. They was waiting for us, so we knew they was like honest. You know what I mean? But we thought we was invincible, Steve. And as I say, they didn't have a name. They didn't have nothing about us, so they only had our mapping offence. What they'd done very shrewdly was it was Tower Bridge Flying Squad and Barnes Flying Squad. They watched one of my co-defendants go into a friend's house one day, and they very craftily put a paid informer into the person's house as an addict. So the guy, basically, I went into someone's house one day to have a smoke with a person and have a party and have a bit of sniff, you know, because he was one of them mates what we went round and had a party with and done things like that. And all of a sudden I see a guy laying on the settee, and I asked my friend who the guy was. I hope my computer lag out. Am I still here, Steve?
Yeah, you're still there, mate. You're still there.
Yeah, so basically, to cut a long story short, the guy got introduced to us from someone else who was in the house as a game person and someone who was on the run from the police, and he needed money fast to get out of the country because he was a wanted man. So I took him on as a driver. My other co-defendants at the time said no to me. There's a bad smell about him. We don't know him from Adams. Don't take him on. But I had a little bit of a soft spot, and I've still got a soft spot now for people. You know, everyone that knows me, Steve, I wear my heart on my sleeve, and anyone can spin a line around me, you know. So I took him on, and I put him on a few jobs, and it was on the last one, which the police was actually waiting for us outside. There's helicopters, there was armed response, there was snipers on roofs. just waiting for us to come in and out, inside and out of a post office, what we've done. And that's how we all got arrested, down to an informer. But they still didn't have no evidence on us, as far as I was concerned. So we got put on remand for the one armed robbery, which we got arrested for with the informer. And it quickly came back that the informer had told the police where our getaway cars were, where our lock-up garages were. They've gone back to the garages. They found balaclavas. They found a gun. They went round to a friend's house and they found a car which I just purchased. So our DNA, they was finding our DNA everywhere. And in the end, they had so much DNA on us and so much forensics evidence on us that I didn't have no alternative but to go guilty on it.
Yeah.
And own up to it, Steve. Do you know what I mean? I committed the crimes. I've always been that type to own up to my crimes. You know, if you commit a crime, you've got to be able to do the time, and that was the case for me, Steve. You know, yeah.
Alexander's asking if robbing banks is still doable today. I would say you answered that question pretty much earlier on because of cameras, etc., and security measures. It's impossible. Those days are long gone.
Long gone. Those days were gone since the early 90s, Steve. When they put CCTV and they started putting devices in security guards' belts, alarms. When the red dye come out, and also they started putting the springs inside the security boxes so that when you smash the box open, you couldn't get the box, you couldn't put the box nowhere because it has springs. Yeah, the banks and the post offices were putting dye inside the money. You know, there's no way in the world you'd ever get away with it nowadays. Not a chance in the world. And if anyone is thinking about doing it and thinking that it's quick, easy money, then I'm afraid to say you're on a downward spiral and you're going to go to prison for a very, very, very long time these days.
Wise words. David Reed says, when you look back at your life, what is your biggest regret? And what have you realised was the worst thing you'd done? And he also follows it up by saying, he didn't mean it in a bad way. I believe redemption is something that makes us all human. Admit mistakes and move forward. Second chances are crucial, and I wish you all the best.
Cheers, mate. My biggest regret in life is not listening to my family. Because my family could obviously see the downward spiral I was going on. They was very aware of the crimes I was committing, and they was worried sick. Because back then, a lot of armed robbers were getting shot, Steve. A few of my friends have been shot on different armed robberies, and obviously, like, well, I've got such a loving family, you know, they was frightened of me getting shot, and obviously frightened of me going to jail for the rest of my life. So, and they was all saying to me, you know, no, don't, please leave, come with us, you know, and don't go, get away from the gang, you know, we love you. They offered me everything, you know, the money, financial things, but I don't think really many people really understood at that time, even my own family, Steve, that I was a broken man. And my fate was it soon come to an end when I got the big sentence. You know, it was inevitable. So, to be honest, Steve, getting that sentence was a bit of a blessing in disguise. I know it sounds horrible, but it was a blessing in disguise, because if I didn't get that sentence, I would have most definitely been shot or killed coming out of an armed robbery. Either that, or I'd have ended up getting a life sentence, and I'd never see daylight again. Because when I went to jail, when I did go to jail, I wasn't one of those people to go in there and get my head down and get on with my sentence. Even whilst I was in jail, I was very active. You know, I was game. I was losing remission, and I was getting shipped out from one prison to the other prison to the other prison. I was known as like a nuisance in prison, and they just didn't know what to do with me, Steve. Do you know what I mean?
You came in contact with a lot of notorious prisoners. We've had a few questions about John Venables, of course, quite notorious for the wrong reasons, for the crime that he committed with poor young Jamie Bulger. Yeah, I mean, tell us a little bit about that encounter that you had with him in prison.
I've got to be a little bit careful about this, Steve, because obviously, whatever you want to call it, law or repercussions or
Yeah, it's allegations. It's an alleged.
allegations. Allegedly, this is what happened, Steve. Allegedly, this is.
Yeah.
So I was in Wayland in 2008, and I was coming up to the end of my sentence, which was in 2010, and John Venables come into the jail. He'd come into the jail on a different name, so his name had been changed, and I was a wing cleaner. So one of the SOs, which is a senior officer of the prison, he's known me for many, many years from young offenders, and I was in my 40s now, Steve. So they know who's game, they know who's staunch, and they know who they can tell things to, and they know they don't tell things to. And sometimes that's dangerous, Steve, because if you go on what a prison officer tells you, he could be stitching that person up. He could be stitching that inmate up. He might not like that inmate, and he might be saying he's a paedophile, he's a nonce, just because he doesn't like that inmate. So you've got to be a bit careful of things like that. But this SO in question, Steve, I knew him for many, many years, and he pulled me over to the side, and he said, "This is allegedly, Steve," and he said to me, "John Venables has just come into the jail." Just to give you the green light and let you know he's just come into the jail. I was aware that he'd just been recalled, John Venables, down to being raided, and the police found a lot of stuff on his internet to do with children, pornography, and the rest of it. And to be honest with you, Steve, I'm looking at you man to man. Who does like a paedophile? I'm sorry, but
Exactly.
So he'd come in there, and the SO told me who he was, and basically he was allegedly that when he come out of his door one afternoon, that same afternoon for his dinner, he got caught on the side of the jaw, punched on the side of the jaw, allegedly. He fell to the floor, and someone with a pair of steel-toe cap boot jumped on his head twice, and left him in a mess on the pool of blood on the floor. And that was it. So basically, I only had a few days left in my sentence. He got severely hurt. Let's put it that way. And I got interviewed by the police at Wayland Prison regarding this offence.
Yeah. That's fine. You've answered the question. Of course, that isn't never been more obvious that it's just an allegedly story. You made that quite clear. So yeah, from our perspective, I understand exactly where you're coming from on that. Other notorious prisoners, who have you come across inside? Any big names?
What else I'd like to say, Steve, is where I've done so much birds and I've been around the systems, it's always the same circle of people. What you see every time you go to jail, you'll know someone in every jail you go to. It's the same circle of people. So obviously the officers get to know that who's game and who's not game. And I was used in many prisons, including Belmarsh and Whitemoor, by the officers to go and do these paedophiles. So they were slipping pieces of paper. There was a hit list flying about. It was called a hit list. Basically, someone got hold of the paedophiles sex offenders list in prison, and that list was called a hit list, and that got leaked to inmates in prison by a prison officer. So I was used by many prison officers as not a hitman, but they was telling me who the paedophiles were. They was telling me who the nonces were, and I was going in and I was doing them. I was doing them really bad. I'm not going to say who I was doing, but I was putting a pound of sugar in a jug, hot water. I was going in their cell and I was covering them with sugar. I was putting 2 razors into a toothbrush and I was slashing their faces. And this happened in quite a few prisons. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, Steve, that's what I thought I was put in prison for, because no one likes a paedophile, no one likes a nonce. Do you know what I mean? And I was very, very notorious for doing this inside prison. And it wasn't until later on in life when I come out and I finally realised, you know, that it was a stupid thing, really, because you could have got a life sentence down to things like this, you know. But when you're in a mix at that time, if you come across one of them in any jail you go to, basically, Steve, it's who gets to him first. It's not the case of when someone gets to him; it's who gets to him first. You know what I mean? And I was used in many different prisons by many different prison officers to do things like this.
Well, I'm sure the Bulger family were very happy, mate. Whoever did it.
I hope they are.
Yeah, I'm sure there were. Funko says as well there was a pedo smashed up in a South London prison 2 days ago. He'd only been in 14 minutes, so it still goes on. Other prisoners who you came across, big
That's
names.
music to my ears, Steve. That's music to my ears. That's what makes me smile, because you know, to do that to your children, to ruin a child's life, you know, that's what they deserve. That's what they deserve. So the notorious people I've come across, Steve, is probably everyone what you know. You've interviewed quite a few of them, actually. You know, Pat Tate, Mickey
Yeah, six
Steele.
boys. Yeah.
Mickey Steele. Oh God, Kenneth Noel. You know, Charlie Bronson. You have
Yeah,
quite a lot
yeah.
to
What
do
was
with.
what was what was it like to see Charlie inside? I mean, I've visited him, of course, on numerous occasions. Write to him, keep in touch with him, speak to him on the phone. But from my perspective, I'm not a criminal. I'm not an ex-criminal. I'm just somebody who has an interest in crime. But with regards to Charlie, I can see him for what he is.
Yeah.
Institutionalized, but somebody who's got an immense talent with art and has got a great sense of humor. What about you? What was he like for you being inside with him?
To be honest, when I first got my sentence in '99, he was in Belmarsh and he was on the unit. So I was on House Block 4. I was a Category A, but I wasn't a double A cat. So he was a double A cat and he was on the unit opposite us. I'd see him down the segregation unit. I got arrested one time, see him down the segregation unit. He was always on like a 10-man unlock on his door. He was like a really... I see him in the cage once because there's 2 cages in there, and I was exercising in one yard and he was exercising in the other yard. And all he used to do is train. He was always training. He loved talking to younger people, telling them the rights and wrong. You could tell he was the type of person that wore his heart on his sleeve. He hated authority, and that's because of how they treated him in there, Steve. They bullied him, you know. Every chance they got to wrap him up, they wrapped him up, and they brutally bullied him in there. So I didn't really have a lot to do with him in Belmarsh because, as I say, he was on the unit, and I only see him down the segregation unit. The next time I see him was in 2001, which was in Whitemore, and that was also down the segregation unit. But this time he was in the next cell to me, so I was next door to him. I was put on good order and discipline for doing tattoos. I don't believe I was a prison tattooist, would you, Steve? But yeah, I was a prison tattooist, and yeah, they put me on good order and discipline, and I was put next door to him. And we used to chat through the walls, we used to chat through the pipes, and we used to chat out the window. He used to ask me lots of things about outside, where I was brought up, what type of things were going on out there nowadays. He used to talk about computers, about mobile phones. He used to talk about his drawings. And yeah, but even then, like, every time he was let out into the exercise yard, he was on like an 8-man unlock. So basically, every time he got let out in the yard, you could look through the gap of the door and you could see through the gap of the door. Looked like there was frog marching, they were surrounding him. And basically, like, when they used to unlock his door, they used to say, get to the back of the cell, you know, get on the floor, and then unlock his door, you know, and completely brutalise and bully him. But, you know, he cried to me. He actually cried to me, Steve, one day. I heard him talking to himself one day. He was either talking to himself or he was doing some maybe a bit of his book, or he was into poetry. He was always like writing and things like that. And I heard him talking to himself one day, and I banged on his wall, and I said, "Charlie, you all right?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "Who's that?" I said, "It's Joey. Like, I've been next door to her for a few weeks." And he said, "Oh yeah." He said, "I'm good." He said, "I'm good." He said, I can't take much more of these down here." He said, they keep brutalising me, they keep bullying me. He said, "My wrist, they've ripped all this skin off around my wrist." He said, "They broke all my fingers." He said, "I've had enough of it. I just want to go on normal location." He said, "I want to be a role model inmate." He said, "I just want to be normal." He said, "I just can't take no more of it. They just keep bullying me." He said, "I can't get out of the segregation unit." So, it's pretty sad stuff, Steve. Do you know what I mean? I actually looked at him like, I'm not being horrible, but like he was a kid. He come across as like a kid to me. He didn't have many experiences of being outside. He was always asking questions about reality and what happened outside, and all you could do is feel sorry for him. Do you know what I mean? I obviously used to hear him train, because he used to train all day and all night. You could hear
Still
him
does.
absolutely bonkers with it. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, he hasn't murdered no one. He's not raped no one. And what they're doing is they're punishing him for what he'd done like 35, 40 years ago, Steve. Do you know what I mean? He's been reformed for a very, very long time, and he's changed. He's an old man now. He's a changed man. But as you know, once you're known as a problem to the system, they never forget it. And I feel really, really sorry for Charlie, and I hope he comes out one day, and I mean, he could never, ever be any threat to the public now. He's an old man, and look at the youth of today, stabbing each other, killing each other. He's a completely changed man. So every time I think of Charlie, all I can do is like feel sorry for him, Steve. I write to him. We write to each other quite a lot. He sends me his drawings and his postcards. So yeah, I'm still in contact with him. God bless him.
Yeah, Blacker Brown's asking when he'll be back on the phone. His phone's been screened at the moment. He's got an appeal in, hopefully this week, and hopefully he'll be back on the phone soon. But he's still in contact the old-fashioned way by letter, and things are going okay for Charlie. He got his parole hearing date very, very soon. But if you haven't listened to the phone calls, check out the Charlie Salvador playlist, and you will be able to hear the different uploads that we put on. Pamela Butters says, proud of how my brother has turned out. Many years of heartbreak and years of visiting nearly every prison in the country. Lovely message, that.
Cheers, my sister. I love you too, Pam. Love you too.
Lovely that.
Oh yeah, without my family, Steve, I wouldn't be sitting in this chair today.
Talk about the rehabilitation. Talk about that eureka moment when you decided enough is enough. I'm going to come out. I'm a changed man. I'm gonna grab the opportunity.
Do you know what, Steve? I just got to a stage in my life, and I just thought, if I carry on the way I'm carrying on, it's inevitable. I'm going to get a life sentence, and I'm never ever going to get out of jail again. And if I don't change, and I get back out of jail, and I go and commit the same crimes what I was committing before I went away, I'm never going to change. So because I had such a big family network around me, and I had all the love and attention from my family, it was just like a light switch in my head. How can I explain it, Steve? I was in Wayland when it happened. I was around 42 years of age, and one day I was just walking along the landing. I think I might have just had a fight with a youngster, Steve, and I was in my 40s, and he was only about 22 or 23, and it was over a game of pool, something stupid like that. And because I had a big reputation in prison, I was looked at as like, if you take him out, then we're going to climb up the ladder a little bit further. I was one of them ones. So I was becoming a very, very old man in jail, Steve. And I was aware that around me, as everyone was younger than me. And, I had a fight over a game of pool one day. I was 43 and the kid was 20, 24, 25. He was only other stupid, and he said to me, right, get in the shower. And because I was so well known, and I had a reputation, I couldn't say no to him, and I wouldn't say no anyway. So I went into the shower, just with a pair of boxer shorts on and my sandals, and he come in with a pair of boxer shorts and sandals, and his brother come in. He was a travelling boy, Steve, who I had a fight with. I ain't going to mention him name, but he was a travelling boy, and his brother see fair play, and we had a fist fight. Well, to be honest with you, Steve, I lasted around 20 or 30 seconds. You know, bang, 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 it was over. I probably got about 2 or 3 punches in, and before I knew it, I was on the floor. Do you know what I mean? He didn't jump on me or nothing like that, and his brother said, right, he's had enough, and they stopped it. And it's funny because the next day I was walking along the landing, and I just said to myself, right, you know, you can see what's going on around you. You know, if you don't change now, this is going to be you for the rest of your life. And I decided that was it. Enough was enough, and I'm going to reform myself and get my life back together and get back on track and give back into the community, and also give back to my family some love and attention what they've given me over the years. And I was age 42 when that happened, Steve, and I can't explain to you how grateful and how happy I am that I made that decision to turn away from crime, move out of the area, stop taking drugs, stop hanging about with them people who are committing crime, and be completely reformed what I am now, you know. So yeah, life's great, Steve. But yeah, a lot of it is down to my family why I changed, and they give me the motivation to change, Steve.
Pamela says you grew up.
I did, yeah, but I didn't grow up
What
until in my late 40s.
what made you want to write a book?
I tried to write it whilst I was in prison in 2005, and it wasn't the right time for me. So I've done a whole A4 pad and looked at it, and I thought it ain't right, and I ripped it all up. So I was torn about the idea since 2005, and I was looking up to a very great friend of mine called Noel Razor Smith. I know Noel inside jail and outside of jail, and to be honest with you, it was his inspiration what made me write my first book. I was with Noel when he wrote his first book, whilst he was in Whitemore. It didn't get published until he actually got out of prison, but I was with Razor when he wrote that book, and I just thought it'd be a great idea to write my book and to put a bit of awareness out, and to put to let everyone know that committing crime is not glamorous, and you know, if you read this book, this surely should put you off crime for life. So really, I wrote it really to let people know what it's like, you know, when you go into gangs and you get told it's this and it's that and you're going to be a millionaire, you know. I just wanted to get it all noted down. I just wanted to write it for deterrent and for determination, Steve, you know, and just to get my story out, to inspire other people. That's why I wrote it.
Yeah, and I mean it's been received really well. Nicholas from the fella up here says a South London Borstal Boys Tale. It's a great read. Anybody who hasn't got a copy or hasn't had the luck to read it, it's there. That's the cover. You want to get onto Amazon and download it. It's available as a hard copy or on Kindle. But well worth a read. Tells you Joey's remarkable story and journey. You're putting a lot back, Joey. And you know, the stuff that I see on your social media is always positive, and you put out some stuff again just in the last 24 hours about, you know, raising money for the homeless.
Yeah, you know, I just think it's time to give back. I'm not full of guilt, but I'm full of remorse, Steve, and you know, I suffer with PTSD, so I just feel I have to. Something's telling me I have to give back to the community, and you know, I know what it's like to be homeless, and I know what it's like to be like left on hard times. And a lot of these homeless people, what me and my missus both visit on a weekly basis, you know, I can really relate to their stories. You know, breakdown of a family relationship. They get quickly hooked on drugs, you know, and because they're hooked on drugs, they can't maintain no relationship, and then they become homeless. And you know, the stories are so similar. And I'm a great believer in giving everyone a second chance. And these people, you know, they've got absolutely nothing, Steve. You know, and we go out and we give them like sleeping bags, hot soups, teas, and coffees, and not only that, I actually sit down and I can get on their level, and a lot of them like get spat on, people piss on them, people humiliate them. So for someone like me to actually sit down and talk to them on their terms and on their basis, you know, a lot of them cry. You can see it in their face. This is what they want, you know, someone to reach out to, and I love it. I absolutely love, me and my missus love going out, feeding them, giving them sleeping bags, you know, blankets and stuff for the winter. And the lockdown, it completely ruined me, you know, it shattered me, because that actually stopped it. We couldn't go out and do it, but now we've come out of lockdown, we've started to go out again and feed the homeless again and search for new people. So, you know, I'm a great believer in everyone deserves a second chance in life, Steve, because I got a second chance, you know. So if I got a second chance with the life what I led and the crimes what I've done, if people are giving me a second chance, then everyone deserves a second chance. And I just feel it's my passion and my desire to help other people right now. And the more I can give back to the community, the more inspiring it's making me, and the more it's giving me that drive to go further and further and further. And my goal is to go into young offenders prisons and institutions, you know, as a motivational speaker, to do talks to the young offenders, to try and deter them away from drugs and the life of crime. So, and these opportunities I'm getting now, Steve, I've never ever got years ago, and I'm so grateful for the opportunities that I've got today. I'm not in this for gain, Steve. I'm not in this for money, because you can't earn money out of these things. What I'm doing, I'm doing this for awareness more than anything. My aim is for awareness, and
Great stuff.
not to glamorise crime in any way or shape whatsoever, because, you know, it might only be petty crime what you're committing, but one day all good things come to an end, and it all ends in tears. You know, you might think you're on top of the world, you've got hundreds of thousands of pounds around you, but it's blood money. It's not right money. It's not earned the right way. It's not straight money. When you go to work properly and earn proper money, you appreciate money a lot more better. You know, now I've got my life back together and I'm working for a living and I've got a wage coming in. You know, just that little bit of wage what I'm getting feels better to me than going out committing robberies, earning thousands of pounds and having no value for money or no value for life whatsoever. You know, I might only earn £300 or £400 a week, but that £300 or £400 a week I'm earning, Steve, you know, is on a different level altogether. You know, it just feels completely right this time. And I don't need thousands of pounds what I needed years ago. And I didn't need the thousands of pounds years ago, but I thought I did. I was deluded, Steve. You know, I was on drugs. I wasn't right in the head. Because you're not right in the head. You don't think right. You think right, but you're not normal when you're on drugs. The old saying is you're talking through beer glasses. You know, when you come away from drugs and you get down to reality, you know, you appreciate life, and life is so nice for me now, Steve. It's unbelievable.
It's a great place to leave. A very positive message. Someone who's led a hell of a life. I've plugged the book a couple of times, but I will unashamedly plug it again. Get a copy of South London Borstal Boys Tales by Joey Barnett. Get it on Amazon. It's available on Kindle or hard copy. Get it now. Well worth a read. And Joey, good luck, mate. You've turned your life around. It's a positive story. It's a positive end to the story. Hopefully a lot more years to go, and just thanks to your sister for joining in as well, coming on and you know, and giving us such a, you know, a little bit of feedback to the people in the chat. Thanks to everybody for watching, and Sam, it's been a great interview. Sam says, so proud of you, hubby. Thanks, David Reed, for love and respect as well. David's been wonderful in the chat. Stay safe. Luckily, we're coming out of this lockdown now, Joey. So,
I'll see you at Dave, Steve.
well, this is it. I've got a couple of events coming up in London. Hopefully in the summer, I will ping you an invite, Joey. I would look forward to seeing you there, mate.
Absolutely amazing stuff, Stephen. And I'll tell you what, you're so inspiring, and you know, it's people like you what inspire me, what I look forward to as a role model. You're a role model to me, Steve, and the things what you're doing is so good. It's marvelous. It's great. And you know, I wish you all the best too, Steve.
Thanks.
You're an absolutely great person, a great friend, and you know, I can't wait to see you and have a beer with you, mate.
Thanks, mate. Very kind. Look forward to seeing you and Sam. Take care, mate, and thanks for coming on the True Crime Podcast. Take care. God bless.
God bless you, man. Stay safe, Steve. Cheers, guys. Thank you.